Hello and welcome back to another episode. Thanks for joining me. And what I have sitting here is the Hasbro Pulse Limited Nerf gun Mandalorian Amban Phase-Pulse Rifle. I've had this sitting around for a while and I wanted to get around to painting it like I've done with my Aliens Pulse Rifle and my Boba Fett EE3 blaster. So I'm going to go ahead and give a quick overview of this thing, which actually looks really nice. Has a working LED inside the scope here. It lights up red. Not a huge deal. But it also has sound effects when you cock it. The chamber pops up. You load your Nerf bullet in here, and when you close it, it's got more sound effects, and then of course your firing trigger. So it sounds pretty good. It's a good looking gun, just like the other Hasbro limited guns, again like my Pulse Rifle and Boba Fett blaster. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've started out like I have with all of my guns. I've puttied in all of the screw holes that hold the gun together. Obviously I can't putty up that battery compartment, but I can putty up all the areas where there are holes from screws. And then there's also some other little seams down the center of it where the two halves of the gun are held together that I'll try to sand down and get rid of the seams as much as possible, especially here on the stock handle there. And then of course I have to sand down the logos, the raised logos, this one that says Star Wars and the one on this side that says Nerf. Have to sand those down and smooth it out. There's also some warning writings and things in here on the side that I'll have to sand down and smooth those out. So I'm going to go ahead and start by just sanding everything down now that I've already filled in the screw holes with putty. And I'm just going to sand down, starting out with this Nerf logo here. And I've got that sanded down and it's nice and smooth now. And just wipe away all the excess dust from sanding. You can see a slight shadow of it there, but that's like in the plastic. It's not actually raised. It feels very smooth to the touch when I touch it here. Now I'm just going to go through and start sanding down. There's these little tabs that fill in some screw holes. Then of course I have my putty where I did screw holes. I'm just going to go around and sand down all of these and try to get them as smooth as possible around the entire rifle here. And then I'm going to continue on sanding down all these little warning labels and stuff on the side of this wooden piece here. And that's nice and smooth to the touch and is looking good. Continue on with the raised Star Wars logo and just sand away. It actually does not take too long to sand these away. It's taken me maybe 10 minutes on the logo to sand it down. And that's nice and smooth, even though you can still see the word Star Wars. Then, as usual, I'm going to spray the entire gun with my Tamiya fine gray primer and spray it all down and get everything nice and covered. And this will show me any spots that I need to resand. It highlights really well the spots that still stick out and need to be puttied and or resanded. And overall it's looking pretty good right off the bat. Even the seams down the middle, there's a little bit of line there where you can see, so I'm going to have to go through and sand this down, maybe throw a little bit of putty in there to smooth it out. But overall it's looking really good so far. It's amazing how just primer can start to make the gun come to life. That one needs to be sanded down a little bit more. You can see the circle there. This one here, that one's smooth, even though you can see it, it's just because it's a different texture. I need to throw some putty in this little crease here, and sand those down some more. So I've done some putty in some of those little areas, let that dry, and then I'll resand them again, sand them down. Also some of the There were little notches here on the prongs on the end of the rifle. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and start painting the gun. I've taped off the stock there. I'm going to paint the rest of the gun all black. And I'm going to use my usual Army Painter matte black paint. This stuff, I just love the look of it. It goes on really nice and clean, and just like the look of it in the shade. So I'm going to do the entire gun with black. And now that it's dried, there we are, all black, painted. And I like the sheen that the black has. It's a really nice looking, it's matte black, but it has a little bit of a sheen to it. It looks really nice. Right off the bat already starts to kind of look like a metallic black. So then I'm just going to take some straight old cotton balls. I'm going to shove them down inside my scope here, because the inside of it is white. And then I gave it a shot of black primer, and then I just pull the cotton balls out, and now it's black inside, but you can still see the red light come on. So I'm going to move on here with my Folk Art nickel paint, and you've seen me use this before, and I'm just going to put some on a napkin here, just a cloth, and I'm just going to start rubbing it onto the gun itself to create the metallic look over the black. And it's kind of a rub and buff in there, like I have the prongs done and this tip done. I'm going to do a little more in there to clean it up and make it look a little more smooth, but you can see how that's going on there and how that's making the end of the gun look. I've repainted this area with primer because I forgot it's wood, so not black, and I need it primed first. And then this middle strip is going to be silver. So since I have this primed, I'm going to go ahead and start painting it. I'm starting off with my Viejo chocolate brown. That's what I'm going to use for the brown base coat for this particular section of the gun. And now I'm just going to paint the entire area with the chocolate brown here. And I've got that all done and pulled the tape off, and I've painted this strip black now so that I can do my silver over the black to make it look metallic. Tape that off here. And with that taped off, I'm just going to airbrush the Tamiya chrome silver paint right over the black to give it that metallic band look. A little bit thicker airbrush spray than I wanted, but it'll work fine when I get it thick enough. And with the tape off, you can see how that band looks. I've also done the band back here on this section, and it's looking good so far. So I've also taped off the scope here, and I'm using some sponges now to put more of the Folk Art paint on here, and it's kind of rubbing and buffing, and I'm trying to go in the cylindrical shape of the gun, trying to make it look as smooth and metallic as possible. And I like the way it's looking. There's still little areas I'll probably touch up, and also there'll be some weathering to cover some of that up. So I'm going to continue moving on here again with my Folk Art nickel, and I'm going to continue painting the rest of the gun. I'm going to do it with the sponge, getting a little bit of a smoother paint spread using the sponge. I like the way it looks on here. It's a little easier to do. I'm doing the strokes, trying to do it in the shape of the gun, so I'm like doing downward motion on this metal portion here, and I just do it all around the gun in the same direction that it's supposed to be flowing. And here's a rough first pass at using the nickel paint. There's some areas that I'll go back over and try to fill in some more, like there. And now I'm going to go ahead and work on the stock. So I'm going to use Viejo Flat Earth as my base paint for the stock, and I'm going to go ahead and paint the entire stock here with that. I'm making the stock a slightly lighter wood color than that other wooden piece in the middle of the gun, so this is going to be, you know, a little lighter. There's the first pass with the Flat Earth, and that's looking good. Some of it is a little heavier than others, but that's fine because I want it to have kind of a weathered look. Then I need to paint these bands black so that I can, just like the other area, put some chrome silver over these black bands to make them look like metal bands holding the wooden stock. So I'm going to do a Tamiya clear coat to protect the stock. Then I'm going to start doing a wash, and I'm going to start doing the leather brown wash over the stock here to try to fill in all the little wooden creases and give it some depth to the wood and make it look like there's grain inside the wood. And it's filling in all those grain areas that you see there in the plastic. Just going to keep going around and dabbing some darker browns on there. I'm going to do some with a sponge as well. Make it look a little more natural so it's not like stroked on there. Just give it some blotchy areas so that it's uneven and not perfectly, perfectly coated. And that's how the stock is looking. I like how it's picking up the grains and there's some darker areas and it looks just kind of rough and the scratch marks are a little bit darker. So I like the way the stock is looking so far. Then I'm going to use some of my Tamiya pastels, the sand. I'm going to use a dry brush that I have here, and I'm just going to start to very lightly go over the stock here and pick up some of the raised areas of the wood grain as well to give it even a little more of a separation and a depth and a highlight there in the wood. Also makes it look a little more worn in certain areas. I'm just going to keep going around the entire thing until I get what I feel like is good enough and what I like. And that's how the stock is looking now. And I like the way the wood looks. I think it looks like it's a wooden stock. Then I'm going to use some Tamiya pastel soot. I'm also going to darken up some areas around the stock. Make it look like it's been obviously held a lot, so it's kind of dirty from hands holding it and just from being put up against the shoulder when he's using it. So I'll put some on the back of the stock here to darken it up because that's where areas are that it's going to be used against the skin or the clothing. And again, this is how it's looking, and I really like how this is turning out so far. So I'm going to do a little bit with the pastels on this wooden piece here in the middle too. Doing a little bit of that sand to give it a little worn look on the edges of the wood, like it's been handled again, a little dirty. And then I'm doing a little bit of the soot as well to just do some darker patch areas. And that's how I have that looking so far. So I'm going to take my Tamiya flat coat. I'm going to go ahead and spray the stock and then remove the tape. And I have this section here that unfortunately pulled off with the tape. I'll have to fix that up with some black paint and some more nickel. But that's how the stock is looking so far. So now I've taped off the metal band areas here on the stock so that I can go ahead and paint those to make those look like they're metal. And I'm just going to go ahead and use my nickel, and I'm just going to rub some on there with the sponge like I've been doing with the rest of the gun. Just rub it on, get a little more on the handle here. I'm going to go ahead and rub some more of the nickel up on the top band. And here we have the bands all done. There's the rear band, which looks really nice, looks like metal. So I have these sections here, these tubes, and I have these black areas here that are supposed to be gold. And inside here is also supposed to be gold, and again those tubes, and this here holding the scope. So I've taped off the pieces that are holding up the scope here, taped off so that I can get those painted. And I'm going to go ahead and use my all-clad pale gold paint that gold. So I'm going to go ahead and start airbrushing the all-clad onto these sections here. Try to get a nice smooth coat of the paint. And I've got both of those painted with the pale gold. And you can tell it doesn't look very metallic right now. So I'm going to take my Tamiya TS13 clear and spray some clear on top of there. And voila, all of a sudden it gives it a nice metallic look and it has a nice, sheen to it. So I like the way that's looking, even though it's also a little uneven. That's totally fine. Then I'm going to go through that little circle area and these tubes. I'm going to paint with the same gold. I'm going to paint it by hand. And now I've got those painted and this painted. Inside here is painted. And there we have the stock. Everything is looking really good so far. I've pretty much gotten almost all the gun painted with the primary colors that I'm looking to paint it with. Next thing I've done is I've given a coat of Tamiya clear over the prongs here on the tip of the rifle, because now I'm going to go ahead and do some more painting. You'll see in this shot from the show there's like a rainbow color, like heat tempering. So I'm going to do some paints over the prongs here. I have my Tamiya clear yellow, Tamiya clear blue, and Tamiya clear red. And I'm just going to go ahead and start lightly airbrushing these clear paints over the metal surface of the prongs. I'm going to start out with the yellow here. I'm just going to go along and start painting the prongs yellow and keep going over it until I get enough of it picked up to where I feel like it's good. Then I'm going to continue on with the red clear. And once I get enough of that and blend it in with the yellow, you can see how that's blending together and it looks like it goes from one color straight into the next. Go ahead and add my blue on the tips here. And that's basically what I've done to the prongs on the tip of the rifle. It's kind of like superheated when metal gets that rainbowish color from being heat tempered. Now I'm going to go ahead and start doing some washes on the gun. I'm going to use some German gray and do some washes over this little area to pick up the recesses. I'm going to start doing some German gray washes over the rest of the gun and just pick up dirt areas and pick up worn areas and try to give it a more natural beaten metallic look, I guess you would call it. I'm just going to continue doing that over the entire gun here. Go around the bottom where it's handled a lot. This is where his hand is cocking it. I'm going to do some over the gold areas that are holding up the scope. Go around and do some on the tip of the rifle here where the prongs come out. I don't mind that there's little blotches. It just looks like things have hit the gun and stuck to it. It could be little chips, what have you. Then what I'm going to do is start to go over the black areas and do a little dry brushing of some Tamiya chrome silver. Make it look like the black has been worn and scratched up a little bit. Pick up areas around the edges, doing the chrome silver around the edges of the metal portion of the gun as well. Make it look like it's been rubbed and the metal has been rubbed and worn. And then I'm going to go over the gun with some Tamiya sand and mud pastels and just dirty it up a little bit again, make it look like it's been handled and worn. And I'm just going to continue going over the rest of the gun until I feel I've got what I want. And then I can present you a completed mod and repaint. Hey, if you like watching my videos, please feel free to give them a like. And so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, click subscribe.